Hello and welcome back to Tales from the Delves. This week we have a story of family and revenge. No, this isn't Fast and the Furious 37. Let me introduce you to two brothers, Cluckins and Nuggly. They were the best of friends, and normally Cluckins, being the older brother, was always very protective of Nuggly. They have leaned on each other ever since their mother disappeared 2 years ago. But surprisingly, our story also includes a Zifkin named Leonard. Now I know to most of you, when you hear Zifkin, you think, oh, big bad Daedra who helped sack Imperial City. But in reality, they've helped sack many places. However, Leonard is not your typical Zifkin guard, roaming the desolate streets and markets. He also serves as a volunteer coach down at the local community center. Now, Cluckins always warned Nuggly to stay on the busy streets of town where it was well lit and not to wander down the alleys. However, on this day, Nuggly was running late to get home and didn't want to worry Cluckins. The quickest way back to their coop was to pass through the alley by the bank. He decided that his brother was always overprotective and that going down the alley one time wouldn't be that big of a deal. However, that decision would prove costly. Nuggly was murdered in cold blood. Cluckins knew something was wrong when his brother was still not home and went out looking for him. He heard a commotion from the alleyway and went to look only to be hit with the reality that his brother lay there dead, surrounded by local officials that had discovered his body. A corn deal gone bad, that's what they were classifying it as. Cluckins knew better and pleaded with them to investigate further, but they wouldn't. As he walked home, eyes staring blankly into space, realizing his whole family was gone now, he passed by Leonard, who had just finished up practice that day. Sensing the chicken's pain, he stopped Cluckins to ask if everything was okay. Cluckins could barely get it out, but explained what had transpired. Leonard invited Cluckins for a drink back at his place. No, it's not one of those stories. While discussing what had happened, Leonard let Cluckins know that he does some light mercenary work on the side of his volunteer job, and offered to help investigate. They finished all the paperwork and had one more drink before going their separate ways for the night, agreeing to meet the next day to start their investigation. The next day they set off and met one of Leonard's informants. Leonard proceeded to blend in and get what intel he could. Success! He discovered a local gang of thugs had set up in one of the nearby caves and had been operating for a few weeks. They tracked down their last known camp, which they did a poor job cleaning up. From what was left behind, they were able to discover the gang's location. They arrived at the cave and Leonard proceeded first, knowing he would have to handle most of the physical work. They cleared through the cave, discovering bodies and clues, eventually confronting the gang's leader. After an intense battle, Leonard came out victorious. They searched through his body looking for any connection to why Nuggly was killed. Cluckins found a contract with his brother's name on it. He told Leonard the name that had signed off on the contract, and Leonard stopped dead in his tracks. He knew who this was. It was his old commander. With their sights on oblivion now, Leonard knew where to start. Again, tracking another one of his informants, he gathered information on possible rifts or portals to oblivion in the area. Leonard warned Cluckins that if he were to die while they were in oblivion, there would be no way he could escape. But Cluckins was determined to avenge his brother. They located the portal and entered in, prepared for whatever might come next. Cluckins watched in both fear and amazement at the ferocity Leonard fought with, tearing through the hordes of minions meant to protect his old commander. Finally, they reached his realm, and without hesitation, Leonard leapt into combat. Blow after blow was traded until finally Leonard was victorious. With the way cleared, they pressed forward and came to a set of steps with a strange dome at the top. Cluckins heard a faint but familiar voice coming from the top. Nuggly! He raced to the top of the stairs, only to be halted by some unknown force. Nuggly's soul was trapped here. Cluckins discussed his brother's predicament and discovered that even though the demon and the gang had orchestrated and carried out this murder, they were not the ones that initiated it. It all made sense now. One of the oldest cults in all of Tamriel, the Chubloons of Rothgar, and more specifically, their leader Dean, had worked with both Moloch Ball and the Baron's chicken shack, whipping up a scheme so evil they planned to possess Nuggly's soul and bring him back as a false savior to lead all the chickens right into the trap set by the Baron. Free chicken sure would make that bottom line look good, and Moloch Ball had been fuming since it was his first venture as an investor. Together they knew they would be able to get people hooked on their chicken wings and rapidly expand through franchise licensing and clever product placement in feature films. Distraught, Cluckins filled Leonard in. Leonard knew what came next. They set off to Rothgar, knowing that finding Dean would be no simple task. They fought through ruins to discover the location of several cult camps. Leonard tore through the camps, leaving none alive. They sifted through the bodies until at last they discovered Dean's location. Now was the time, and Cluckins knew Leonard couldn't fight this next battle for him. No, it had to be him that took down Dean. Cluckins and Leonard ventured out toward Dean's location, Leonard offering one more time to finish off this quest for him. But Cluckins insisted it had to be him. At last, the final showdown. Cluckins entered and immediately caught Dean's stare. He had been waiting for them ever since the news of the cult's camp's destruction reached him. Cluckins approached Dean, hurling several Penguin wannabe references at Dean. Dean, filled with rage, charged at Cluckins, and almost as quick as it had started, it was over. Cluckins stood victorious over Dean. With Dean defeated, they traveled back to the portal to Oblivion and re-entered Nuggly's prison, only to find that his cage had been destroyed and a new portal suddenly appeared. Leonard went over to open the door to the portal. When they went through, they were brought to a place almost from a dream. The sky was filled with color, and there was a sense of peace that neither Cluckins nor Leonard had ever felt before. There in front of them stood Nuggly, waiting to depart to the other side of life, his spirit freed. Cluckins, still saddened by Nuggly's departure, embraced his brother one more time. He knew this chapter might be closed, but the Baron was still walking free. Cluckins knew where he would turn next.